Good morning, LinkedIn. Happy Monday. Getting the week started off in a brilliant fashion with Tony Dowling today. How you doing, Tony?
I'm fantastic, although it's a sweltering afternoon for us in the UK. The morning feels like it would be cooler somehow. I'm going to focus on that.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I can give you a break because it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit
Where's
this
that
morning
in new money, Chris?
in Houston,
In
Texas.
centigrade?
Yep, in centigrade.
No, in Celsius.
Right in
We're about
mid.
25 at the minute, which is
I think that's about on par
yeah.
with that.
But it's humid, man. We're really humid. Anyway,
It is. Speaking of humid, talking HubSpot strategy. Actually, we're talking about your strategy in HubSpot, a key designation and a key thing we'll be focused on with this new series. Um, why do we need to talk about this, Tony?
because experience has taught me. So I go back quite a few years through many media businesses, radio, press, before I got into online and audience and data and all those kinds of things. So I've been sort of subsumed in this transformation world for quite a long time. And obviously, as a HubSpot partner, we do loads of work with people who are using HubSpot either badly or for the first time. And by badly, what I mean, it's a very flippant thing to say, but what I mean is they're not getting out of HubSpot what they think they should be getting. And the number one reason, in my opinion, that we find with the customers that we deal with is because they haven't got a strategy first approach to HubSpot. They have a technology first approach. Now that may be down to the way it was sold to them, the onboarding that they had or didn't have. We know lots of people don't have onboarding or don't take even HubSpot up on their onboarding. But for whatever reason, the mess people get themselves into, if you like, starts at this strategy piece. So what I like to say, they don't embed their own strategy into HubSpot. So this is subtle. It's not a HubSpot strategy per se, although if you think about it, it makes sense that it would be a HubSpot strategy. This is your strategy that you execute via HubSpot.
Yes, and sometimes, especially for us that are focused on strategy, we run into these leadership teams that don't do strategy first, much of anything.
Yeah.
And they get away with it because they build great products and they have some sales rock stars. And usually between those two, they figure out how to do marketing stuff and they show up at shows and they're just charismatic and they just get stuff done. But it's really tactics every day, right?
Yeah.
And to show how prevalent this problem is, I'm going to share some behind the scenes here as I, prepared for this episode and did the post. I get help from AI when I do these posts, but those times where you just don't give it a whole lot and it just comes back with just a great
Nailed it.
answer, right? It usually does that because it has great information or consistent information to work from, right?
Yep.
So getting ready to post today, starting a new LinkedIn Live series with Tony Dowling on Mondays called Let's Build Your Strategy into HubSpot. Please provide an educational event description and a separate post that highlight the problems when you focus on tactics before strategy when using a tool like HubSpot. And already, within the first 30 minutes, somebody commented on your share and said, yep, that resonates with all these problems, right?
Yep.
And when it highlights stuff, because that's all I gave it, right? And ever set up a complex workflow only to realize it doesn't align with your sales process. Sent out a bunch of emails that got crickets because they didn't speak to your audience. This nailed it. And it nailed it because this problem is so prevalent, right? Now, on the
Uh,
other side of this, while we're trying to transition away from point solution,
mm.
it highlights the other part of the problem where because I didn't give it anything, it says, let's turn your HubSpot account into a lean, mean lead generating machine, which is how people view HubSpot and is part of this
Certainly up until
problem.
2021, right?
Right. So I had to tweak that part and let's say it's a revenue generating machine. Okay. That's really, and that's the difference, right? Is the strategy to get leads or is it to generate revenue?
Yeah, and I think my fascination for years, before it was even called revenue operations or revenue acceleration, has been working with business to business sales teams, particularly to get them to sell more stuff, right? That's what we want to do. If we can have a nod in our commercial world, if we can have a nod towards the cost of customer acquisition as well, fantastic. If we can push that down, great. But generally, we're in sales with appointment, we and women. We want to be converting those inquiries into leads, leads into sales, sales into upsell and cross sell opportunities. So revenue is a far better perspective because today revenue requires total alignment across the entire organization. This is the other thing, right? So second thing that we find when we do these HubSpot implementations is the teams are siloed. Teams are siloed. Teams, by their very nature, are siloed. You create a sales team, you create a silo. If you create a revenue team, on the other hand, then you've got far more chance of having integration and alignment through your processes. But if you have a sales team, you have a sales team, you have a marketing team. If you have a customer services team, you have three silos immediately. And the other thing then that happens, the third part of this, why start my strategy is so important, is because if those teams, those silo teams, go to HubSpot in their point solution and it doesn't work, they don't get what they thought, the emails aren't getting a response, and so on and so on and so on, they stop using it. So they then, and salespeople are brilliant at workarounds. Salespeople are fantastic at finding shortcuts. Salespeople almost by definition find the shortest route to get a yes. That's what they do. So we cut out complicated processes, cut out systems that slow us down, cut out things that we don't want to get involved with. And all of this could, for me, can be rectified by with this strategy first approach. So rather than just setting the sales team up with a pipeline and with some AI generated playbooks and lean on them for forecasting, setting up the marketing team with a social media tool and an email and so on and so on, what are we going to use this tool for? And that plays to this final part, the adoption piece. If people aren't going to use it, and the only reason they won't use it is because it doesn't work. That's the only reason somebody wouldn't use a CRM, because it adds work, slows them down, increases friction, doesn't do the thing that they were promised it was going to do. So you have to reset, you have to come right the way back, or even start from scratch right at the beginning. And that customer platform perspective then is so vital, because sales doesn't work anymore in the way I was brought up with it, which was albeit a long time ago. Marketing doesn't work anymore. We've been through outbound, been through inbound. Now we're talking about nearbound and all bound and surround bound and all sorts of bounds. It's really hard to get marketing to work. Customer service, if they're on their own, if they are the people's independent republic of customer services, which they can be sometimes, they're not tapped into either the sales or the marketing team. So they have their own entire conversation with people, firefighting, and approaching this in that siloed manner is just exaggerating all the problems that you're facing from the market, exaggerating all the problems that you're facing from your customers and their changing expectations and the way the world is now working. So the whole is saying, how do I build a customer platform? Start with the strategy. How do I get more out of HubSpot? Start with the strategy. The whole thing comes back to what is the actual strategy. So, I'm sure we'll talk about the individual elements rather than ranting on about that. But I think that's where people fail to see the opportunity of HubSpot as a customer platform as well, because they're using it in silos. They're using it it's not incorrect. They're not doing anything wrong per se. They just haven't started from the same place.
Yeah, and that's where like the only way they are using it incorrectly, even when they're sometimes using it successfully, is because there's no strategy driving, the activity. And
Yeah,
this is a leadership. Like it starts with leadership. If you
always leadership is
are,
always the answer, Chris. Don't listen to what anybody ever tells you. Leadership is always the answer. You got a bad sales team, whose fault is that? Leadership. There are no bad sales teams. There are no bad sales people. Only bad sales leaders. Sorry.
so when we, no, that's exactly right. Because that's where like, one of the things when I, started to do things from the outside last year, I was very adamant about, I don't think leadership teams have been supported at all by most of these ecosystems that are trying to sell them tools and provide, leads gen campaigns. And like every case study I looked at in the HubSpot ecosystem where somebody said they served manufacturing was about lead gen campaigns. And nobody was having really the challenging conversations that were necessary.
Yep.
While at the same time understanding that these are smart people that have led successful companies and they can understand complexity when they need to. If you've seen some of these production facilities that are automated all over there are sophisticated, complex diagrams and strategies supporting all of that. But it's this black and white, it's usually based on math or physics or some like natural
Yep.
law, right? As opposed to the front end of things where it's human behavior, right? And instead of trying to, like apply a strategic structure to that, we think about how we grew, and it's easy to think about what's been working, right? And when all this stems from usually a salesperson, which could be the CEO or it could be just, a great product guy in the beginning, really doing full funnel, like full life cycle account management, right? And then we build from there. And now we get to this point where we've built into silos because these guys need help. But now why wouldn't we build the structure to match that full life cycle too, right? Because and that's where it's like when we have these conversations, it could be so much easier because even when the people are bought in, the organizational structure, the compensation structures stop them every time. And that's why this is
100%.
a change management conversation. It
Yep.
always ends in that. And if you can't get the leaders on board with what HubSpot can do for the
But to be
company,
fair, right, I'm 100% with you. But I think if there's a fault, and maybe that's maybe pushing it, but if there's a fault, think about the state of SaaS or the state of software as a service, generally speaking, right? Everything everything on the internet is the same as everything ever was, right? But whereas everything used to take hundreds of years, everything takes 10 years on the internet, right? It's just this massively compressed. Are we seeing Google move into its decline, which is scary after 25 years of
it's wild
literally
to think
ripping up
about.
the playbook? Is it on its way out? And there's a lot of really clever people who think that might be the case. But if you go back a bit, and like I said, my marketing career started before there was an internet, right? We used to study something called the business orientation. And we started out with something called a production orientation. And SaaS is kind of there, right? Oh, actually, SaaS has probably moved on to the next one. But a production orientation was when you're in a world where demand for the product that you're selling outweighs the supply, the amount that you can make. Right. So somebody comes up with a category busting idea, somebody comes up with a new thing, like a CRM, for instance, and everybody buys it. Right. And all you're concerned about as a SaaS company or any other type of company is building it sufficiently enough and fast enough to meet the demand and to make your profit. Right. After a while, that supply and demand starts to even off. So the old timey version of that was Ford, who apparently Henry Ford never said you can have whatever color you want as long as it's black, right? That's because he wasn't making cars fast enough. There was so many people who wanted cars. He's production orientated. Now SaaS firms have moved into sales orientation. And that's because now there is a proliferation of solutions that mean the demand and the supply are, right? So you don't want HubSpot? Okay, have a look. Well, maybe you start over at Salesforce anyway. You could look at Pipedrive. You've got Copper. I would say HubSpot's the best one, but mostly because it's the one I know how to use. And if you want me to help you in your business, it's easier if I use HubSpot because that's the one I know how to use because it's got that complicated. But there's loads now. Right? So what happens is now we have a sales team to push our solution. Because that demand isn't there at the level it once was, now we have to argue with people that ours is the right decision. And what do they do? What do salespeople do? They figure out pain points. So they go to these leaders and they call it a lead generation machine, and they call it a marketing machine, and they call it a revenue generator, whatever they call it, because chief execs have got 17 million things to do. And if somebody comes along and promises a super sexy piece of software that's just going to increase their sales by 47% and decrease this and decrease that, they're going to buy it. They do buy it. We know it's deeper than that. We know it's much more fundamental than that. We know actually what you're talking about, Mr. Business, is a transformation from the old way of doing things with bits of paper and Excel spreadsheets and sales meetings in the office to a new way of doing things in the cloud, remotely, driven by CRM. That's actually what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about this piece of software being bought to do a one-to-one. This is a one-to-many return. This is a synergistic purchase for your business. This is going to transform if you do it properly. And then, of course, people don't do it properly. And this is the point I'm trying to make, because the sale in the first place was buy this to increase your revenue. Do content to bring in bums on, put bums on seats, convert the bums on seats into sales. Fantastic. This is the tool to do it. It's like it's the equivalent of saying, here's a JCB digger and a shovel, go and build your house. That's what I mean by strategy first. HubSpot's a tool, Salesforce is a tool, all these other things, they're just tools. How you use them is the important bit. And knowing how to use them at their best is vitally important. A typical chief exec, I was an MD for almost 20 years. I learned how to use HubSpot. It took me 10 years. The typical chief exec, MD, doesn't have 10 years to learn how to use this system. As far as they're concerned, it's something for sales, something for marketing, something for customer service. It's a point solution. And I think that's where the issue becomes. And say, the customer platform is such a brilliant way to describe it, because what we're trying to do, we're trying to put you on a new table. We're trying to lift you from where you were prior to technology, prior to CRM, prior to customer data platforms, prior to automation, prior to all this stuff. We're trying to lift you and put your entire business onto a different level. That's what we're trying to do. And of course you can't do that with a one-off subscription to HubSpot and expect your teams to pick it up. It can't be done like that.
Man, so many thoughts.
I could see him. I could see him crossing your face as I was speaking. I thought, shall I stop? No, I'll just keep going.
You're absolutely right. And that's we're not saying this is an easy challenge by any means, right? This has been executed based on all of the human behavior science in the world that says the human brain wants everything to be easy. It will always look for the easy button. If you're trying to sell something, find the deepest pain and clarify that you have the solution for it, right? So the use case sale is the most successful way to do that. But now, and part of the challenge is defining this problem, right? Without using phrases like digital transformation that everybody thinks is...
Because nobody's got time for digital transformation.
Right.
It's I've got stuff to do. I've got businesses to run. I've got products to sell.
Well, this is
100%.
I can't boil the ocean. And it's we can't, that's a cop out. There's a lot of shit. If you're so far behind, if you're still using spreadsheets and docs to manage communications and you're growing, you don't have a choice. The growth is happening to you. You're missing orders. You're missing opportunities, because that's what we don't even talk about that stuff usually. Opportunity cost is amazing, with all of this. And just to dig in a little bit more, got another article to share, because this is why, you know, the habit
Yeah, I saw
of
this last week.
the habit of falling back, like when you think I've got to boil the ocean, right, and you want to just run away from that, you will go to things that supposedly have worked for you before. And we are seeing a rising tide finally, that why would you focus so much on something like Google and understand that SEO and Google and attribution is what all these tools like HubSpot were built to do, and they drove this narrative more than anybody else. Like, it's dead, man. Like,
Mm.
and the only thing you can control right now is the content that you create and the message and the experience that you provide to your audience. Because right now, everybody and their brother and sister are experimenting, no matter which platform you're looking at. It could be Google, it could be LinkedIn. Every platform is experimenting, like based on an uncertain future that AI is just like, we thought it was going fast before. Like that 10 years
Yeah,
has turned into like 10 days,
yeah,
right? So this past, even like for some businesses it wasn't working either, but this is gone, right? And that's where the shift, we have to get good at defining the pain that this customer platform solves for. And no matter, even when they don't, they will make time. Executives make time and prioritize things that are important to them. And as they were growing up in the space, usually they had to learn systems they didn't know about or like. It was just always the accounting side of the business because that's what
yeah,
you had to do,
yeah,
right? So they learned
yeah,
shit like QuickBooks and ERPs and a bunch of stuff they weren't trained on, but they learned it. When you can position something like HubSpot, and because this is what's important, the positioning. Like
mm.
usually I can get buy-in faster because it's hard to argue with the customer centric, customer focused reason for doing anything. You ask any of them, at least the ones I've been talking to, and they will always agree with the fact that one of the primary goals of the business is to serve customers, provide a great experience,
Yeah.
and they know that's important to their growth.
It's always been the only true differential. The customer experience, that the satisfaction or not. So if you look back at a basic customer buying behavior model, you'll see need identification, information search, evaluation of alternative, purchase decision, right? We're all familiar with that. And then right on the end there, evaluation, post-purchase evaluation, evaluation of the thing I bought. Did it do what I wanted it to do? Would I buy it again? Would I recommend it to somebody else? And so on and so on and so on, right? So after the marketing runs out, after the sales chat has disappeared, you're left with something that you've bought, a product or a service. Is it doing the thing that you wanted it to do? So this aspect, now, I believe that change, and think about it, how many of our customers are actually trying, our customers being the businesses selling to other people, how many of them are trying to sell change themselves? Right? If they're selling an air fryer, they're trying to change the way somebody's cooking. Right? If they're selling a massive digger, they're trying to change the way they're going about their construction business. We're all selling change, and all change. The best way to deliver change is through conversation, right? And it was ever thus. If you go back again, I've got this bug at the moment about comparing how things are today to how they were 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, even within my lived experience, my working experience. You know, sales reps had relationships. You'd go out and you'd talk to somebody. That's how you sold. You'd have a conversation. Leaders led through conversation. It's called conversational leadership. It's got its whole thing. Change was delivered through conversations, driven from the top down through conversations, right? And this is why I think the customer platform is so inherently powerful. And maybe we don't even realize why, because it puts all of our customer conversations into the same place. So everybody in my extended business whether they're a salesperson, a marketing person, or a customer service person, or the finance person. How many times finance, we used to call it the sales prevention department. How many times has finance stood in the way? Everybody can see the conversation with the customer. If they can see the customer was getting irate and was unhappy about something, that's going to inform the conversation that they have with them the next. And it may be in a tiny way. Just the customer doesn't have to relive that pain. Oh, I've read up on the notes, Mrs. Jones. We always have a Mrs. Jones in Wales. I've read up on your notes. I can see how frustrated you've been. Always comes, and conversations were just facilitated by digital marketing. They were sped up through social media. They were, I mean, they got to the point now where we're making conversations up with people that are not even people. AI is having conversations with itself about itself. It's always the conversation is a crucial part.
Yeah.
And
And
I
like,
think, go on, Chris. Sorry.
how many times have you heard a salesperson? Because I like this. It's always a combination of sales and product, that starts, most companies, whether your product's a service or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Now, imagine every time a salesperson complains about they wish they had known something so they could let the customer know.
Oh my
Right.
God.
Right. I hear that
That was
all
my
the time.
life.
Right. And that's where communication, when we say customer communication, this includes things like the supply chain vendor that just told the purchasing agent that the lead time has changed. And now, instead of relying on the purchasing agent to send you a separate email, which they don't have time to do, and hopefully they remember, now you can just see it right in the platform. And that's that's what we're talking about when we talk about customer processes.
Yep.
And because there's that side of that, but there's also what you just described, that 20-25 year journey. I know there's industrial sales teams.
Keep talking, Chris. I'm
No worries.
my son's just
Yeah.
joined in. I'll just mute myself for a second.
Sounds good. So industrial sales teams are out there laughing at us right now because they have not changed, right, their tune as far as being able to take relationships from start to finish to sell, knowing that relationships are the most important piece. And they're kind of looking at all this and laughing, I would imagine, right? Because they've never lost track of that. But on the other side of the coin, they will ask things like, I don't know how to scale. I don't know how to scale what we're doing. Like, how do I scale myself? Right? Like, we know what works. I've been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years, but we have this growth. Like, every time I try to bring somebody in, they don't get it. Training is hard. Like, it takes 6 months to a year of ride alongs for somebody. It's like, yeah, because your process is so manual and only you can do it. And what's interesting is you said salespeople are great at finding, or they will try to find the shortest path.
Yeah.
Right. They also try to follow the most certain path, the path that they know. Right. So no matter how much time I say that I can save over here, no matter how easy I say it could be, if it's not clear to them, until you have that HubSpot aha moment where it clicks, whether it's an email template or a meeting link or all these different ways you can get it to click, until that happens, they will survive through a lot of pain because they know it works. They know what's going to happen after they do that. And that's why we come back to change management. And I love having that conversation with admins because it's easy to fall into the place where I don't know why they're not getting it. I showed it to them one time 3 months ago and it was so easy and they nodded their head and they understood. And it's like,
Yep. But it's exactly right. I mean, what a great perspective. I'd not thought of that before. But you do what you do because broadly speaking, it's going to work. And when your neck is on the line, you're going to take that the risk of changing is massive. If you're going to get down the end of a 3-month period where you've been trying to change to this new way of working without having hit a target, you're in trouble. And you can't go back to your boss then and say, "Oh well, I've been learning the CRM."
That's exactly right.
So
All of these
we've
people that we're
all fell for,
supporting,
yeah,
they have a job to do.
yeah,
And if we tell them HubSpot is supposed to help them with that job, usually they will give us the benefit of the doubt and try it. But the moment it doesn't work, they've still got to get their job done. And that's when they start exporting data and doing what they
yeah.
need to do
Creating their own spreadsheets, writing it down on
to get the
a
job done.
napkin, 100%.
Right?
And this is why the strategy first. This is what strategy first really means, right? You've nailed it there. Strategy first is about replicating the way the rep is going to be successful in HubSpot. And that probably means listening to the rep and building HubSpot around them and what they need to do. And let's be really simple and say it's a repository for their conversations. Right? The salesperson is having more conversations with everybody, with anybody else in the business. They're talking within the business, they're talking outside of the business, they're talking to suppliers, they're talking to other sales reps, they're talking to customers, they talk to everybody. And as soon as you get up to a certain level of billing, a certain level of speed, that becomes really hard to do. If HubSpot supports that, it's going to win. It's going to be a big win. If it adds, and this is my personal bugbear, right? When you employ, sorry, when you put HubSpot into your business, you employ HubSpot for the first time as an addition to your processes. Right now, we're going to work like this. That's exactly the wrong way to do it, because you're just adding weight onto an already stressed situation. And that as you just described it, Chris, and that's exactly why I say start strategy first. Let's build it. And I think there's a lot of pressure to use all the stuff as well. Try to keep it as simple as you can, try to strip things out at the beginning. Don't add things in at the beginning. That's another strategy first sort of mantra. But yeah, we're trying to help. A CRM is 3 things. It's a system of record, it's an enablement tool, and it's a method for reporting things. We spend all of this time on the system of record bit and structuring data that nobody ever uses, and we build reports that nobody ever looks at, and we don't put enough attention on the enablement piece. This is meant to make my job as a salesperson seamless. That's what it's meant to do. And as soon as you have apps, and they're coming into HubSpot land now, Salesforce, it's always been a way of criticizing Salesforce. But as soon as you have apps that are required to make it easy enough to use the software that you're trying to use, you're getting into trouble.
Oh man, that's a good place to wrap on, I think. Because we want to help you. Like, we're not going to say there's no trouble here,
No,
because there's change management. There's like just handling things strategically is really your only way out, whether you like it or not. And
and it's
you
really
know,
doable. It's
and
absolutely doable. This isn't. We're not. It may not be straightforward, Chris, but it's worth saying. It's not rocket science.
right. And this doesn't mean, and the reason we love HubSpot is that it doesn't have to be a 12 to 24 month project, right? It doesn't have to be, just this overwhelming amount of change. As long as we understand that it is change, but we're here we've been through it as far as understanding the user side of things and focusing there. And also, like, you know, believe me or not, I still adhere to the concept of the best CRM is the one that gets used. And if that happens to be your spreadsheet right now, like, okay. But what I'm going to do is show you how the HubSpot record index screen looks and acts just like your spreadsheet,
Yeah, super
right?
spreadsheet.
And we will talk about lots of things like that on this series. And I'm so excited to get this started with you, Tony. Strategy.
Yep, 100%. And it's so much. It's bigger and smaller. You just say don't buy HubSpot without it. Just take a minute. Just think. Just listen to what we're saying to you. And we are absolutely trying to help, 100%.
With that, find the opportunity and let's grow. Have a great week, everybody.